I talk with students all the time, and I know in my own family. I was at an event. We had the students co-sponsor or sponsor an event at La Casita about a month or a month and a half ago, and we were talking about the forum was supposed to be about Black and Latino relationships, but what ended up happening is we probably ended up talking as much about ideas of race and racism within our own families as we did talking about the two different groups, because we still have problems, where young girls are told to straighten their hair, skin tone is a big problem, how you speak is a big problem. And so, yeah, and parents, this is a very sensitive subject because, well, in the African American Latino Histories class, I started with a book by Perry Thomas called Down These Mean Streets. Now, Perry Thomas grew up in the 30s and 40s. His parents were Puerto Rican, and they tried to, he was the darkest skinned member of his family. His family trended if you saw him, you would define him as African American, if you didn't hear him speak or anything. And then but his family, in terms of his siblings, they shaded into almost like, kind of light brown into near white, okay? So his father and mother would always tell him, "Piri, you're not negrito. He'd say, well, where do I get my color from?" And his dad was actually dark skinned, and they said, "Well, you get it from the Indians. It's the Indians." And so, which seems funny until you start thinking about how a young man or young woman comes of age, and self-awareness issues and identity issues, how you look, how you talk, is very important for people as they're growing up, right? And so when your parents are telling you, don't look black, and you're black, that's a problem. Or they're saying, keep your hair straight. Or they're saying, do things that de-emphasize the shape of your lips, and those are body image things. You can only do so much. You can only remember to go outside with an umbrella when it's sunny so often. And at a certain point, you've got to just be in the sun. So I think within our own communities, within our own families, these issues of race and racism are just as acute as they've been for a long time, although there have been changes. And I think that this is why the Latino support for President Obama has been such a powerfully positive thing, because we still have problems with racism, but the fact that we Latinos did something quite historic in 2008 and in 2012. The historic thing was we broke a long curse. The curse that I'm referring to is a curse which says that new immigrants come to the United States, from the early 1800s, and the first thing they do is they look to the people in charge, who are primarily white, and they say, what do I need to do to become a naturalized citizen? Well, from 1790 to World War II, to become a naturalized citizen in the United States of America, you had to be what? You had to be white. It was part of the law. It was the naturalization law. And of course, the 14th Amendment changed that to a certain extent, but not wholeheartedly. And so up to the 50s, new immigrants coming into society would say, well, I'm going to become white. I'm going to look down upon the blacks. They're the lowest rung of the society, right? Now, by doing that, they created a very negative situation in the society, which is they just simply reinforced generations of racism, Now, we are an immigrant people as well. I'm not saying that all of us are anti-racist by any stretch of the imagination, but we are making very different decisions now about aligning ourselves with other minority groups, Asian Americans. Asian Americans had an even higher percentage of support for President Obama, right? We have aligned ourselves with with LGBT people. In other words, we're much more tolerant, although I don't like the term necessarily. We're much more open-minded and democratic than our early 20th century predecessors. I hate to make value judgments, but I'll just go ahead and make one, which is that if you looked at most immigrants from Eastern Europe in the early 20th century, they trended white. And they tried to divorce themselves from African American culture, from Asian American culture, from Mexican American culture. And in doing that, they alienated themselves from these wonderful democratic traditions, right? Now, I believe we're not replicating that terrible mistake. That's what I mean by we have broken this old curse of race, even though we still have a lot of racism, within our communities. And we have a lot of clashes between Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Haitians, so on and so forth.